Delighted to welcome a brand new voice on the show. Curtis Daly is from Turn Left Media. Good morning, Curtis.
Good morning. A real pleasure to be here. How are you, Mark?
I'm really well. Fantastic to have you on the show. Why do you think more working class people are backing reform and leaving Labour?
Well, because, and obviously, look, you know, I'm on the left, I don't support reform, but the Labour Party have abandoned the working class. What I find really interesting is many Labour figures seem to think that this is an anti-Starmer vote. That's not true. I mean, bear in mind, Keir Starmer is extremely unpopular, but I think it's an anti-Labour vote. The existential crisis of the Labour Party has happened for decades, not just since Keir Starmer. I mean, if you look at the numbers of the 2024 general election,
Yeah.
people didn't vote for Keir Starmer or the Labour Party in confidence. The only reason why they won was because the Conservatives lost so badly. So in the 2017 general election, Labour got 40% of the vote. In 2019, they got 32% of the vote. In 2024, Keir Starmer got less votes than Labour did under Jeremy Corbyn both elections. But because the Conservatives collapsed, that's how they got a high majority. So I think the question now becomes, maybe we should look at a better voting system, because in 2017 and 2019, you had a strong Conservative Party, whereas you didn't this time. So I honestly think the Labour MPs and Labour supporters are a little bit delusional when they think, look, we'll just get rid of Keir Starmer and everything will be fine. The rot in the Labour Party is existential. The internal machinations of the Labour Party is existential. I mean, they wouldn't even allow Andy Burnham, who's not even that left-wing, but he's quite popular, and they wouldn't even allow him to be an MP. So I think the election result shows that the Labour Party are pretty much dead, and voters are either going to the right or to the left. They're going to reform in many areas. We saw a green surge too. Your commentator before made a really good point actually about fragmentation of votes. A good example is Manchester. Manchester, traditionally quite a stronghold for the Labour Party, and you saw sweeping Green Party gains, but you also saw seats go to reform.
Well, most definitely. And it's interesting there, Peter Barnes, what Curtis has had to say. And I tend to agree with him that actually the problem isn't Starmer. The problem is Labour, a party of metropolitan progressives.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. I completely agree with Curtis and yourself. But this is an existential crisis in the same way that the Conservatives had under Boris Johnson. It is they lost their their centre ground, their North Star. They lost their kind of guiding principle. And for the Labour Party, that was always the working class. It always has been. To lose Wales in that dramatic a fashion, because the Wales and the Labour Party are basically the same thing, in my opinion. You know, they've been in power for so long. To not just lose it to obviously the nationalist side, but then to have reform swoop in and capitalise on the kind of the gap of an opposition is just astounding to me. I mean, I watched the results come in and I was like, well, I knew they'd do very well, but to see that level of anger come from voters was very, very telling. But Scotland as well, you know, Anna Sarwar, I actually feel very sorry for in a way, because they have been punished because of the national government. Starmer has a lot of responsibility to take, but it is the Labour Party's entire ethos and how they have gone about government is entirely wrong, because they never understood, as Curtis is right to say, they didn't win the general election. The Conservatives lost the general election, and Starmer keeps believing he's got this moral crusade that the people are behind him. He won because he didn't wear a blue rosette.
A new Prime Minister, Curtis, would inherit a majority of 165 MPs and 3 years of office. Why are you so sure that a new leader couldn't transform their fortunes?
I mean, I think a new leader could give them a small bump for sure. And again, if we were to speak about Andy Burnham, he's relatively light. He's probably the only sort of person who could maybe steady the ship. But again, the Labour Party is facing an existential crisis because, look, when I speak to voters, whether they go to the left or to the right, people are sick and tired of the two-party system. I think people showed that with the Conservatives when they basically got wiped out in 2024. And it's now showing for the Labour Party, because the political establishment, now again, I know you might agree, I think Reform are the political establishment, but I digress. The two-party system, people feel like it's not working for them. There's not enough meaningful change. So I don't see how just swapping prime ministers means people are going to come back to them. We had 14 years of Conservative rule, and people thought they voted Labour for change. So why would a change in prime minister make people think, "Do you know what, now there's going to be change"? It really isn't. Again, I cannot stress this enough. The local election results was a disaster. I'm seeing some Labour figures say, well, losing 1,500 seats is not great, it's not ideal, but it's not the worst. I'm thinking, when has this ever happened? Again, in 2018, I believe, I could be wrong here, but I believe in 2018, the Labour Party lost just a couple of hundred of seats. And a lot of the political establishment said, oh my God, this is existential crisis for Jeremy Corbyn. He needs to resign, which I thought was ridiculous. But losing 1,500 seats, I mean, Keir Starmer does have to go, but I can't see them commanding the confidence of the people. I don't know if Reform are going to win a majority next time round. I think polling and results indicate that they're most likely to win the next election. But I cannot see that Labour are going to turn the ship, especially that so many people are abandoning Labour to the Green Party. I mean, Labour used to be, again, for the working class, but they used to be a social democratic party. They used to believe in public ownership of utilities. They used to believe in unions. They used to believe in higher taxes on the wealthy. And that is now being commanded by the Greens with the wealth tax, with nationalising energy and other public services. So you've got the left-wing economic programme that is left and they're going to the Greens. And even though, as much as I really despise Labour, they have reduced immigration, I think people are still angry about that in some areas, and they're gravitating towards reform. So there's a real splinter here, and I don't see how Labour can bring that back.
Working class people, though, Curtis, are right to back reform, aren't they? Because what they would have in a leader like Nigel Farage is a feeling of being heard. He would tackle illegal immigration, which is bad news for working class people because it's often poorer areas where these people are accommodated. Also, illegal immigration creates further competition for limited state resources. He's going to scrap net zero. Net zero, a horrible policy for industrial communities and bad news for anyone that's poor because of rising energy costs. Two big tentpole issues there, immigration and net zero, that are a big plus for the working class.
Obviously, that's where I disagree. I think the policies from the Greens, again, I appreciate that Talk TV probably doesn't support the Greens. I think there's a difference between Reform getting working class voters and their policies helping the working class. I don't believe they will. I mean, their economic agenda seems quite similar to just what Margaret Thatcher
Well,
offered.
let's stay on immigration, though. Illegal immigration is really bad
to talk about immigration, the conversation has gone from let's tackle illegal immigration to legal immigration now. I think that is concerning people. I mean, Reform has spoken about indefinite leave to remain. The average person would say to you, look, I'm not, I have a concern with illegal immigration, but as long as people come here, work hard, pay taxes, I'm fine with that. The problem we have, though, is when it comes to asylum seekers and refugees, they're not allowed to work. So if they're just going to be staying in a hotel and getting very small state subsidies, that doesn't seem to work. So I think a policy that people would appreciate is making these people work. And again, the Greens are the only ones.
You can't let the asylum seekers and the refugees work, because that takes jobs away from the people that live in this country who are already struggling to find work.
Well, I would say, I mean, if you look at many job adverts, right, there's so many precarious work out there. I think it's probably a bit of a distraction just to think that the lack of jobs are happening because of immigration, whereas in reality, the rise of AI, for example.
Asylum seekers work, there are going to be fewer jobs.
Let me just talk about AI quickly.
It's creating competition for jobs.
Well, there's also the things when it comes to immigration, you've got the supply and demand side. Immigration also causes the demand side as well, because they'll spend money and that creates jobs and it creates a multiplier effect. The problem we're having, though, is there's no decent quality jobs out there, regardless of immigration levels. And that's something we need to talk about. Again, the rise of AI, the amount of job applications from firms that aren't real job applications. They're just, I mean, a good example of this is when you have a company that wants to hire people, often they want to hire internally, but they have to put out a job advert. Now, that particular job advert would never go to an external person. It's because they have to. There's a lot of jobs online which aren't real, for example. So I think we need to have a fundamental conversation about our economy. Immigration can come into it, but we cannot ignore things like automation, AI, and the fact that there's a lot of low-paid, precarious work out there. And that is why, like it or not, yes, people are feeling drawn towards reform, but that's why people are being drawn towards the Green Party too.
But Curtis, I hear you that you care about those at the bottom end of the economic ladder. I suspect that's why you're in politics. It's why you're part of Turn Left Media. And I share your concerns about our unequal society and about people that are struggling, people dependent on food banks, etc. I totally hear you. But I think there's a left-wing argument to say that high immigration, both legal and illegal, is really bad news for poor people in this country. That's my contention. My proof of that is 70,000 people have entered the country illegally since Labour won the election. That's billions to accommodate these folk, many of whom perhaps half will stay for the rest of their lives and statistically will be a net dependent on the taxpayer. So that's bad news for working class people.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we both share the view that we need to radically change society and especially help those in the bottom. We obviously have disagreements.
So we don't want to bring more people in to add to the bottom?
I don't know. I mean, the left-wing argument isn't about bringing more people in. It's more about saying... because my
view if you don't stop the boats.
I mean, boats and immigration are two different things. I mean, you're not bringing 70,000 people on a boat at one time. But of course, when it comes to immigration, they're two different things. Now, for me... they're
both bad for working class people, is my point.
The immigration topic, I think, should serve the economy. So it's not an ideological thing. It's not like we need to get to this number in terms of an ideological view. It should be, look, we have gaps in social care, for example. Now, the long-term strategy should be having British people fill those roles. But that is going to be decades long of investment. And that's one thing which I don't think Reform are looking at, is spending more money on our NHS to invest a new era of workers. At the moment, we do have to fill those gaps with immigration. But over a long period of time, with more tax and spend policies, you don't have to rely on immigration to do that. And that's, I think, a big gap between Reform. They have the rhetoric on immigration, but they don't have the economic policies to say, we're going to spend so much more. Yes, we're going to raise tax on the rich. That means we can spend on our NHS, create jobs for those in this country, and we don't need to rely on immigration. So there's a big gap there. I would like to see that from Reform. I don't expect we will.
Curtis, briefly, I think you've talked a lot of sense, and I'm very grateful that you've joined us on the show. First of many appearances, I hope. Just a quick thought, and I totally agree with you. It's a dysfunctional economy that relies on cheap imported labour, which, by the way, is not great news for the donor country that these folk are leaving. You've got countries, like Somalia, that don't want to be losing nurses and all the rest of it. Yeah. Just briefly, what about the cost to the country of legal immigration? The idea that if you bring in low-skilled workers such as the Boris wave, that yes, these folk will come in, they will work, they will pay taxes, but they will also, because they're low-skilled and low-paid, be reliant on in-work benefits, subsidised housing and much besides, which is ultimately a net cost to the taxpayer in their lifetime.
Well, the question there is, why would they be reliant on benefits and housing? And you get to the
because that's what happens when you're a low-skilled worker.
Well, no, I was just going to say, you've almost nailed it. I mean, I have a slightly different view, but you've almost nailed it. Because there are British people in this country who are also on universal credit because pay is so low. So to me, I'm like, we need a high-paid Britain. So we need to look at raising wages of people, and you can only do that, and again, I appreciate you might not agree, by stronger unions. So if you're saying, well, low skill and low pay means you're on benefits, yes, that means pay should be higher because work should be paying for your life. I mean, a full-time job, I mean, this shouldn't be radical, but a full-time job should mean you can get on in life.
Well, no, I agree with you. I mean, I can't believe it. I keep agreeing with you.
For a lot of people, that's not happening.
Well, I keep agreeing with you. Well, yeah, because my fix for social care would be if it paid £20 an hour to work in social care, then there are plenty of people who would jump at the chance, as you say, because it's very, very low wages. We have to get people from overseas. In the end, though, briefly, Curtis, that's just dysfunctional, and it's going to end in financial ruin and societal collapse.
There are many crises we are facing. Again, I tend to not think that immigration is the number one cause of that. For me, it's, again, the amount of precarious work out there, but also the cost of living and the cost of housing. I mean, the housing crisis is astronomical. And in 2019, we had a record number of houses being built, but we didn't have, we still had a housing crisis. So those are the key things. I think it's bills, I think it's your rent, I think it's your mortgage and housing. And again, like it or not, the Green Party are the ones talking about those core economic issues. whereas it feels like the Reform Party are hyper-focusing on immigration, but haven't spoken about these core economic ideas. And I think what we're seeing, though, maybe people see it as exciting, but two fundamental different views of society going forward. You know, the Labour Party and the Conservative Party all try to occupy the same grounds, right? And they basically said the same thing. We're in a new era of politics where Reform have one vision for the country and the Greens have a radically different vision for the country. But it feels like that at least we kind of have a choice. At least some people can say, look, I'm going to go with Reform because I believe in these things, but I'm going to go with the Green Party because they believe in these things. And maybe you could say that's a more of a healthier democratic society rather than two political parties just aping each other and sounding the same.
Curtis, a delight to have you on the show. Thank you for making time for us on a Sunday morning. We'll speak again in the near future. Curtis Daly, Turn Left Media.